The Palestinian Health Ministry announced on Tuesday that since October 7th, the Israeli military has killed nearly 30,000 Palestinians and wounded more than 70,000, with thousands more missing or buried under the rubble. Every single child in Gaza is facing death, either by Israeli bombardments, starvation, or disease. More than 1 million children are living a catastrophic health emergency directly caused by Israel's ongoing blockade of humanitarian aid, according to a new report by Save the Children. In northern Gaza, which has been effectively cut off from aid deliveries by the Israeli military, 1 in 6 toddlers is acutely malnourished, says UNICEF, the United Nations Children's Fund. Palestinian rights groups say that Israel has brazenly ignored the International Court of Justice's orders on January 26th to prevent genocidal acts, stop incitement to genocide, and, quote, enable the provision of urgently needed basic services and humanitarian assistance to Palestinians in Gaza. Quote, Israel continues to deliberately attack hospitals, pushing the health sector out of service, while using starvation as a weapon of war, a coalition of Palestinian human rights organizations stated on Monday. Humanitarian aid delivery has declined since the ICJ ruling, as Israel escalated its delegitimization campaign against the UN Agency for Palestine Refugees, the groups added. Quote, the denial of aid delivery to northern Gaza is particularly alarming, they say. According to the United Nations, fewer than 20% of humanitarian aid missions during the first 6 weeks of the year for areas in northern Gaza were facilitated, while more than 50% were denied. Philippe Lazzarini, the head of UNRWA, said that the agency has not been able to complete a food aid delivery to northern Gaza for more than a month. Amnesty International released a similar statement on Monday, admonishing Israel's failure to comply with the World Court's orders. Heba Morayev, Amnesty International's regional director, warned the US, UK, Germany, and other Western countries, quote, with influence over the Israeli government, that they, quote, must not stand by and watch as Palestinian civilians die preventable deaths due to bombardment, lack of food and water, the spread of diseases, and lack of healthcare. Morayev said that in light of the humanitarian catastrophe in Gaza, these states' support for Israel's actions, including its flouting of the ICJ's ruling, is indefensible and could violate their obligation to prevent genocide. For more, read my recent piece, Every Child in Gaza Faces Starvation, on electronicintifada.net. The Palestinian Health Ministry said that it has begun to monitor deaths among infants as a result of severe diaper rash, chronic diarrhea, and malnutrition in northern Gaza. On Tuesday, the ministry said that 2 infants died as a result of dehydration and malnutrition at Kamal Adwan Hospital in Beit Lahia, warning that a lack of water and malnutrition will kill thousands of children and pregnant women in the Gaza Strip. Michael Fakhri, the UN Special Rapporteur on the Right to Food, told The Guardian on Tuesday that, quote, the speed of malnourishment of young children is astounding. The bombing and people being killed directly is brutal, but this starvation and the wasting and stunting of children is torturous and vile. It will have a long-term impact on the population physically, cognitively, and morally. All things indicate that this has been intentional, he said. Fakhri added that, quote, we have never seen a civilian population made to go so hungry, so quickly, and so completely. That is the consensus among starvation experts. Israel is not just targeting civilians, it is trying to damn the future of the Palestinian people by harming their children. The United Nations Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs, OCHA, reported on Tuesday that at least 10 Palestinians were killed over the weekend when the Israeli army opened fire using guns and tanks on 2 separate occasions, while crowds of Palestinians waited for humanitarian aid deliveries in Gaza City, in the northern half of Gaza, which has been effectively cut off by Israel. On Sunday, the Palestine Red Crescent Society and a United Nations team evacuated 24 patients from Al Amal Hospital in Khan Yunis in the southern Gaza Strip. The UN says that Al Amal Hospital, quote, was subject to a prolonged siege and raids by the Israeli military until February 22nd, which resulted in at least 25 deaths and rendered it minimally functioning, according to the World Health Organization. The UN adds that, quote, despite prior coordination with the Israeli authorities for the staff members and vehicles, Israeli forces blocked the convoy, forced patients and staff from ambulances, and stripped the paramedics of their clothes. 3 of the Red Crescent paramedics were subsequently detained, delaying the convoy for more than 7 hours. 2 of the paramedics remain in detention. On Monday, the PCRS announced the suspension of all humanitarian coordination procedures on medical missions in Gaza for 48 hours over, quote, failure to ensure the safety and security of the society's emergency medical service teams, the wounded and the sick in PRCS hospitals, centers, and ambulances. Yesterday, on Tuesday, regarding the medical evacuation, the UN's humanitarian country team in Palestine stated that, quote, this was not an isolated incident. Aid convoys have come under fire and are systematically denied access to people in need. Humanitarian workers have been harassed, intimidated, or detained by Israeli forces, and humanitarian infrastructure has been hit. Just prior to Sunday's incident, 2 family members of Médecins Sans Frontières were killed in an unprompted attack by Israeli forces against a deconflicted compound where their staff and family members slept. The humanitarian country team added that the UN and the Palestine Red Crescent Society staff had to leave another 31 non-critical patients at Al-Amal Hospital. PRCS nursing staff entertained displaced children whose families are still sheltering at the hospital in an effort to keep their spirits up. The UN also highlighted a report by Help Age, which advocates on behalf of older people, stating that the more than 111,000 elders in Gaza are among those most at risk of hunger, dehydration, illness, injury, and death. Older people in Gaza were already living with the long-term impact of conflict and displacement before the current Israeli attacks, with reduced access to essential health and social services. They are also disproportionately affected by non-communicable diseases and are likely to be severely impacted due to damage to health infrastructure and shortages in medication, the report said. Older people who have had to evacuate are said to be mostly accommodated in overcrowded shelters that are inadequate to meet their needs, as many require support to manage chronic health issues and disabilities.